All right, let's look at today's do now. It says a diver is scuba diving 32 feet below sea level. He's a shark and decides to, it would be good to swim a little closer to the surf and swims 15 feet below sea level. What is the distance between the two locations? So looking key here is recognizing the word distance, which means that it doesn't really matter which direction he's swimming. So we see that he's moving from 0 here, he's moving from negative 32 feet below sea level to negative 15 feet below sea level. So we should be able to recognize the distance there is 17 if we just look at the number line. If we don't use a number line, we need to use the rule, which is negative 32 minus negative 17, or negative 15, and take the absolute value, change it to addition, negative 32, add the opposite. Here when we look at these, we have numbers going in opposite directions, so that's why we're subtracting. It's going to be absolute value of negative 17 is 17. Distance is 17. Again, talking about distance, it has no direction. Alright, a scuba diver is 32 feet below sea level. He sees a shark, so we have the same situation. The difference here is that we're talking about change in elevation, so direction definitely does matter. So again, now we look at this and we're 0 here, negative 15, negative 32. He's at negative 32 and he's going up to negative 15. But we still get the same answer here because we have end is negative 15. So remember, we're talking about end minus start. Minus negative 32. Change this to addition. Add the opposite. And here we should get, again, opposite directions on our arrows, so they end up adding together. That gives me, or subtracting, that gives me 17. 32 is the larger absolute value in this addition, so we get a positive answer. So we're actually going to get the same answer, and I apologize that my copy here does not have the correct answers. On your sheet, it definitely does have the correct answer choices. Alright, so let's look on over at our aim for today. Alright, today's aim, Kipsters will be able to add and subtract positive and negative rational numbers. Positive and negative rational numbers. So really today's lesson is very little new material. It's just applying the material that we already know, seeing things and practicing a little bit more. So we talked about adding rational numbers. We talked about how there was no difference between our rules when we were adding rational numbers, whether they were positive or negative, compared to integers. And the same thing is going to be true of subtraction. So as we work through today, really we're just going to be practicing what we've already done with integers, with rational numbers, decimals, and fractions. Alright, so looking at this, the first question says, suppose a 7th grader's birthday is today. She is 12 years old. How old was she 3½ years ago? So 3½ years ago, that means we're going back 3½ years. A couple different ways we can write this equation. If I think about it, I could think about it as a subtraction, minus 3½ We could also think about it as adding the opposite, which is kind of the way that we want to do it if we're going to be making it on our number diagram. 12 plus negative 3 and 1/2. So on my number diagram, I definitely need to label some points here. I'm thinking about this. I'm just going to start at 0. And I need to have halves involved, so I'm actually going to label every other one as a whole number. That's going to give me the space to identify a lot easier where the halves are. As I do that, I see that I'm running out of space, so I actually have to not do that. So every other one I'm going to label, so they're all going to be one whole, but I'm going to only label every other one just because I don't have space to do that. Okay, so we know that as we're adding this, our arrow diagram is going to start with positive 12, so we have an arrow positive 12. Oops. And then we're adding negative 3.5, so we're counting back 3.5. 1, 2, 3 is going to take us to 9, plus an additional 1/2. And so you're going to see that we're going to end up here between 8 and 9. So that's going to be 8.5. Alright, so that's just a quick review of how we can use our number line. So go ahead and do the next problem on your own, and then we'll do a quick check. So pause the video as necessary. So we should be starting at 0, negative 2 and 1/2, so that's backwards 2 and 1/2. Then we have plus 5, so we're going to be counting forward 5. It's going to take me to negative 1.5, negative half, 1, that's 3, 4, and 5. That takes me here to positive 2 and 1/2. Alright, go ahead and find the sum of this one on the number line. So this one's not a sum right now. This one is a subtraction. So the first thing that you're going to have to do before you can put it on the number line, using the rules we've already done, is the same thing that we've been doing for the past couple of days, which is change this to an addition. So go ahead and change this to an addition and go ahead and graph it on the number line. When you're graphing it on the number line, I definitely do suggest picking out that you're counting by fourths or halves at the very least, because that's going to make it a whole lot easier to go ahead and do this. I think it's probably going to be best to count by halves or by fourths. And so think about your number line like this. Alright, go ahead and finish labeling this number line and draw your arrow diagram to answer this particular problem. So now that I've got my number line drawn, we can go ahead and start with this. So we start with, I'm going to have to switch this to an addition, add the opposite, which is negative 2 and 1/4. So our arrow is a positive 1 forward. And then since we have negative 2 and 1/4, that's negative 2 backwards. So negative 1 and negative 2 plus an additional negative 1/4 takes us all the way back here to negative 1 and 1/4. Alright, for the next problem, we want to go ahead and do the same thing. We do see it's a subtraction, so you should recognize that the first thing we need to do with that is go ahead and switch this one up the way it needs to be switched up, and go ahead and graph this one on the number line as well. So I start by making this add the opposite. We start with a negative 5.5. So that's negative 5 and 1/2. And then we have plus 8. So I'm going to start here at 5.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Takes me right here to 2 and 1/2. Positive 2 and 1/2. Alright, moving on to the next one. Alright, so here it asks us to find the following sums and differences using a number line model. This means that for each of these we'll have to create our own number line, thinking about what we may want to be counting by. So go ahead and work through this to draw your number lines. So looking at this first one, we'll go ahead and draw a number line. We're going to have negative 6 on my number line. And it looks like I really don't have to go past 0 because 5 1/4 is less than that. So I'm going to put negative 6 on this number line. And I'm personally going to label mine by halves, so that's going to be negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1. And I know I don't need to go past 0 because I can see that this is actually going to be less positive than it is negative. So I start with my 0 all the way back to negative 6, and then plus 5.5. So forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gets me to negative 1, and then an additional 1/4. So that's going to be halfway between my 1/2. So when I start to look at this, what I have left here is 1/2 plus 1/4. So that's going to be negative 3/4. Alright, coming in looking at the next one, thinking about this one on our number diagram, I see that we're moving negative 0.9. So on this number diagram, I'm probably going to want to go ahead and count by 0.1s on this one. So I'm going to start here at 7, and we're just going to kind of float off over here, like, oh, hey, there's 0 over here somewhere. And then 7.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Oh, sorry, it's just a little bit there. 7.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 8. And so when we draw our number diagram, we're starting at 0, wherever it is out there, and we're coming out to 7. And then looking at this, I need to change this to add the opposite. So add the opposite, which is positive 0.9. And I'm counting 7.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. Takes me to 7.9. Next one, 2.5 and negative 1/2. So I need to either change one of these to a fraction or one of these to a decimal. For me, I think this is just easier to make this 2 and 1/2 plus negative 1/2. Throw this one on a number line. It looks like we're going to be all in the positive here. 0. Let's call this 1/2. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3. So looking here, we're starting at 0. We're coming out a positive 2.5, and then a backwards 1/2, and that takes me right here to 2. Go ahead and make sure that you've done this next one. It looks like we have negative 1/4 plus 4. So on a number diagram, again, this looks like it's all going to be in the positive. I'll just start with 0 down here. I'll count by halves. 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5. So our number diagram, we're starting with negative 1/4. So actually, I'm going to end up over here. Negative 1/4 is going to be right here in between. And a positive 4, so 1 whole brings me across 1, 2, 3, 4. Takes me to, so counting again, we should be ending right here at 1/4, 3/4, 3/4, and right here at 3 and 3/4. Three and 3/4. And the last one, change this to an addition by adding the opposite. It's all going to be in the positive part of the number line. 0, 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. So we're going from 0 to 1/2, and then we're adding an additional 3. So 1, 2, 3, and we can see that ends us here at 3 and 1/2. Alright, let's move on to where our partner work is. Our work here asks us to create an equation and a number line diagram to model each answer. So this means we need to read carefully. Go ahead and work through each of these on your own. Write your equation, and then create your number line. So for each of these, we'll create an equation, and we'll write a number line. And when we write our equation, we can put whatever it equals here. So make sure you're reading each problem carefully and you're writing the correct equation. I would check in with the equation maybe before you go ahead and you start drawing your number line. So this first one, she owes her father $7. So that means she's in debt, negative $7. And she got paid $5.50 for babysitting. So that's in addition to her net worth. Okay, so I want to draw this on a number diagram. Looks like we're still going to stay in the negatives. I'm going to count this by wholes, just because that's what I have space for. So I start here at 0. I'm coming out to negative 7. And then I'm moving forward positive 5.5. So 1 whole, 2 holes, 3 holes, 4 holes, 5 holes, and another half. Puts me right here at negative 1.50. Next one, start of a trip. Car's gas tank contains 12 gallons of gas. So again, work through this one, write your equation, then create your number line. So looking at our number line, during the trip, the car consumes 10 1/8 gallons, so that's going to be 12, and then plus a negative 10 1/8 we're using the gas. Drawing this on a number line, again, I'm going to count by whole numbers. And so we're starting from 0, coming all the way out to having a positive 12. And then the 10 and 1/8 is actually moving in the opposite direction. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 gets me to 2. And then an additional 1/8. And this is where our number diagram is not entirely going to help us be accurate. We know it's somewhere in between. We took 1/8 away, which means that we were left with 7/8. So this is going to be 1 and 7/8. Alright, finally we have a fish swimming 3.5 feet below sea level. 4 hours later, the fish was at a depth of 5 1/4 feet. What rational number represents the position of the fish with respect to the water's surface at 11 a.m.? Alright, so make sure that you draw or write your equation. And then create your number line. So looking at the equation, we're already 3.5 feet below sea level, so we're negative 3 1/2. Alright, it's 5 1/4 feet below where it used to be, so it's an additional negative 5 1/4. And I need to figure out where he is. So looking at this, it looks like I'm going to be all in negatives. I'm going to count by halves here. 0, 1, 1/2, 2, 3, 4. These are negatives. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we'll see if that's enough. So I'm starting at negative 3 1/2. So right here, my 3 1/2. I'm moving negative 5 1/4. So 1, 2, 3, and I see a problem with my numbering here. Fix this up a little bit. Negative 7, negative 8, 9, 10. Alright, so I was at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1/4. So that's going to take me just a little bit further, but not all the way through. It's going to land me here between my negative 8 1/2 and my negative 9. So it was an additional 1/4 in that negative direction. So that's going to be negative 8 3/4. Alright, that's our work for today. Go ahead and move on to your independent work.